tonight's class focused on taking a bad mood and giving it to God. Why this can be so helpful in your divine service. So if this is good for you, please subscribe so you'll get these videos directly in your inbox. And please share with other people that can also benefit from these concepts of the Rebbe.
I'm not sure if this would apply, but for a long time I've been struggling with my guilt feeling about my kid and how I raised them, not from, etc., and we're far apart, and all that. And then I was coming to the Yetzer Hara in anger and shut him off, and what I'm trying to say is that, like, since I started learning here in these classes, I just feel the transformation within, the changes within, which is incredible. So now if I get to any thought that would want to make me feel guilty or bad about myself, rather than use the anger, which it doesn't come in the same way that it used to be before, but now I go with love to that Rachel that raised those kids in a Goyish area, no Jew, no help, all by myself, cheating husband, all that stuff, to actually come to that who was there back then with love and affection and understanding rather than guilt feeling. Does it make any sense?
What you're saying is beautiful. It's not what I'm saying here, but it's beautiful.
Okay.
And I'm so glad the class helped you get to that point, because it's amazing. I'm going to take your story and change it to this model, but I'm not suggesting you change it, because I like what you're doing and I think it's great. And I love how you're framing it as like really affirming you with everything you of however many years ago, with everything you were handling and what you did. And I think that's a beautiful approach. And I'm so glad Tanya helped you get to that approach. But just to understand the concept, I'm going to take what Rachel said, because yeah, it's a great example. Just like Miriam's was a great example. So let's see. So what Rachel is saying, so she would in the past get in the space of like guilt, anger at herself, bashing herself. Her kids are her fault and she messed them up and she did this wrong. I don't know if any of us ever thinks that. We might, she did this wrong. She did this wrong. She did this wrong. And look what they're like now. And that's a lot of gevura. That's a lot of intense, harsh, evil, false judgment. A very bad space to be in. And you might bash yourself for other reasons, but you might still understand and relate to what she's saying, even though the details in your story are different than hers. But it's a very good example of this, what the Rebbe is talking about here. So when you're in that space to get, she's Baruch Hashem, thank God, came to a very good way of dealing with it. But I'm giving this version of the story to stop and say, wait, I'm not thinking past. I'm going forward. I do need to change. My children need a lot of help. But banging my head against the wall is only worsening the situation, because now not only are they messed up, I'm also messed up. I'm going to change. I'm upset at what I did. I'm going to change. Well, how can I change? They're already adults, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to think about the roots of what's bothering them, and I'll add more in that area and tell God to put it in their bank account. Maybe they have some essence doubt of God that I created because I didn't know what I was doing and I have way too much on my plate and way too little tools to handle anything. So maybe I'm going to study Shar B'tachon Chavos HaLevavos, the gate of trust and duties of the heart, and tell God this study is for them to strengthen their belief in you. I'm going to change. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to make something positive. I'm not stuck. And it's not 30 years ago. And I have a lot of tools now. And I have a lot of strength now. And I'm going to do something different to change the situation. So that would be like what the Rebbe is saying here, because you're using this like self-judgment. You're not saying, oh, I'm such a wonderful person and they're wonderful, or they're not, but it's got nothing to do with me. I'm a wonderful person. So let's just move forward and forget about it. No, you're not doing that. You're doing something that's harsh, strong, but in a positive, godly way, because you're focused on the future and change instead of the past and stuck. But that was just to give an example of the concept, because what Rachel said was such a great way, a springboard to give an example. Rachel, what you're doing is beautiful, and keep it up. And I'm so glad Tanya helped with that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so if we look at what the Rebbe is saying, we'll see the Rebbe's example. But again, what Miriam said, what Rachel said, great examples, and I hope it made clearer when you talk in the abstract. It's sort of hard to get a grip on it, and I hope now it's much clearer the point the Rebbe is saying. The Lachin Amru Razal, and therefore our sages say, they say something very strong and sort of strange. Man should always make angry, the Rebbe doesn't conclude the quote here, his good inclinations over his evil inclination. Our sages say you should always be in an angry mood. You should always get angry and use your godliness to be angry at your evil. Now, we wouldn't think it's really a good idea to always be angry, even in a godly anger. We don't think that's too healthy, and it's not. So what do our sages mean? You should always, always be in the state of anger of the godly over the evil, this godly anger. So the Rebbe says, what does this mean? What this means to say is, always do it when you see it's necessary. Don't always be angry. Anger is not a good space. It's actually even sort of a dangerous space. This godly anger could slip into just regular anger, could slip into really bad places. But when it's needed, like Miriam's example, like Rachel's example, when it's needed, then always pull this tool out of your box. Then always use this. And then the Rebbe says, even more, I'm going to give you a generic great time to use this. But Shas HaKosher, the best time to do this, the best time for most people, the most perfect time to do what I'm suggesting, is when you're depressed anyway. Because of whatever's going on in your material life, your car, your washing machine, your air conditioning, all those details. Or sometimes, sometimes we find ourselves upset and we don't even know why. You might be familiar with that, you might not. So the Rebbe is saying, in other words, I'm not suggesting that you should always be doing this. It's not a fun space, and we want you to be in happy spaces. It's not a happy space. We want you to be happy. The Alter Rebbe wants you to be happy. Hashem surely wants you to be happy. So we don't want you to be doing this all the time. But the Rebbe says the best time to do it is whenever you're not feeling very happy. Because you're not messing up something good. You're not messing up something positive. So when are most of us upset? Most of us, most of the time, are not upset about our spiritual situation. Obviously, some of us, some of the time. But most of us, most of the time, are upset when our physical lives seem to be falling apart a bit. Small, big, when you're tired, the small can become very big. When three of them are happening at once, they can seem huge. A lot of details that we might not remember in a week or in a month or in a year, but at the moment can really pull us down. This is perfect. You're in a bad mood anyway. Now's when I want you to do this. And the Rebbe says sometimes you don't even know why you're upset. So if we think this is a modern phenomenon, the Rebbe wrote this a few hundred years ago. Also then, you could be upset and not even know why. But you're upset? Perfect. Let's utilize it. It's almost like in the temple, they used everything for God. So they even made a ceremony about removing the ashes. On the altar, they were constantly burning. There were 3 fires there. There was fire from God. There were many fires. There was many offerings. They were always burning. So inevitably, there was a lot of ash. So they had a whole ceremony of removing the ashes from the altar. You could say, just removing ashes. No, 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 no. Everything we use for God, everything is ceremonious. Everything has meaning. Everything has intent. So you're not in a happy space? Beautiful, perfect, beautiful, perfect. I'm not happy. Perfect, because now you can do this service. You're not going to mess up anything. And actually, if you do this service, it will probably put in perspective whatever's bothering you. I mean, just like in a very practical sense, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. There's lots of tragedies happening, lots of people suffering. And whenever you hear something of someone, you know them or you don't know them, and some hard thing someone's going through, it sort of puts your own life in perspective. I mean, I definitely find that. I don't like, my things that are bothering me become so small, like leaves. So it like changes my focus. So first of all, when you're upset anyway, is a great time to do this because you're in the perfect mood. Second of all, when you're upset anyway, is a great time to do this because you're not going to ruin a good mood. Third of all, when you're upset anyway, is a great time to do this because use it for God. You should use everything for God. So use upsetness for God. And fourth of all, when you're upset is a great time to do this because by the time you're finished, you probably won't be upset about whatever was bothering you in the first place if you can even identify it. Because it will like shrink in comparison to what you're doing, and it'll be like put in perspective and be like, that was bothering? That's ridiculous. So that's where the Rebbe is moving forward with this idea. What we're suggesting is tough. And we don't want you to always be doing this. And it wouldn't be healthy to always be doing it. And if you find you're always doing it, it's not good and you should stop. And when you're really happy and everything's going wonderful, we don't want you to do this either. But when you're not, that could be a good time to do this. To really say, I want to turn this energy over. I'm feeling all this negative stuff inside. Great. I want to use it and give it to God and say, all right, if I want to be upset, let me change. Let me be upset at the things that I feel I'm stuck with and not moving forward, and let me know I can move, I can change. I don't have to be stuck anymore. I don't care how many years I've been doing this. I take it all and like pour it in a positive way. So I guess we will stop at this point to be continued next week to discuss a little more details on how to do this, and then moving on to where we really want to be, how to move to joy. Because the Rebbe wants us to be in a state of joy. We want to be in a state of joy. God wants us to be in a state of joy. We're on the same page here. So we're going to conclude this and then say how we're going to get this person, how we're going to get ourselves to feel joy.